Hey, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here because I've always dreamed of standing on a big red dot. So thank you so much for making this happen for me. I might retitle this talk Love Letter to the Parks Department Director, and that'll make sense at the end. What I do is I study public spaces, places where people congregate together, share ideas, food, play sports, and as an ethnomusicologist, and that's a whole other talk as to what that is, I explore these spaces through music, and I explore these spaces through playing music. And I do that by playing with other buskers. And buskers, for those who don't know, that's just another name for street performer, the people you walk by, right, who have a guitar in their hands or an accordion, maybe they're juggling or tap dancing, and then they ask for a little change with a hat out in front of them. You'll find them on Thayer Street out here in Providence, or a pedestrian mall in Denver, farmers markets wherever, street corners. And this research is important because when we think about public space, and we think about music in public space, we have to also think about the restriction of music in public space. Because most public spaces you go to, you don't hear music. And that's not necessarily because people aren't there to play music or don't want to play music. So I got into this street performing thing in sort of a roundabout way. A long time ago, I was in a rock and roll band, and I was in a very lucky rock and roll band. Good, but more lucky than good, maybe. We got a record deal when we were sophomores in college and got to do all sorts of cool rock and roll things, touring, making records, being in magazines, that kind of stuff. And for a 22-year-old person, that was probably the coolest job short of being a ball player and astronaut. But as you get older, or as I got older, it wore on me a little bit, the grind of touring and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted something more musically adventurous, something to expand myself and expand my audience maybe, because as a singer in an indie rock band, you play mostly for 20-something white kids who are from upper and middle class backgrounds, and that's fine for those of you who are of that background. But this boredom this malaise, this boredom set in when I was on tour. And so the band I was in began to bring acoustic instruments with us in the van or the bus, and we'd find places to play on the street or at farmers markets, et cetera, before our gigs at night. And we'd play old-time music, bluegrass music, blues, music from where I'm from in Tennessee. And it really opened some musical windows, but also some philosophical windows for me. And maybe the best way to tell you about that is just to give you an example. I was downtown in the fine Midwestern city of Indianapolis, and I was by the obelisk, for those of you who are familiar. And within 30 minutes, playing music just on a sidewalk, some random sidewalk, I remember the delivery kid, she gave us, delivery kid from Jimmy John's, she dropped like 2 sandwiches in our case. And then 10 minutes later, this really highfalutin looking businessman in a really nice suit dropped $50 in our case and stayed for 4 songs, interrupting his walk home. I could tell that music really meant something to him, just coming across it. And right after that, a young guy who was selling his rap CDs stopped and was like, "Oh, I really love what you're doing, let's jam." And we were like, "How?" And he was like, "Just play something." And then we did. And that collaboration, right, facilitated by bringing our music to a public space, that interaction with audience is so different from what we were normally used to. That was amazing to me. That was magic to me. And that continues to be magic to me whenever I do it. And when I go and research now as a doctoral student, these spaces that facilitate that magic, Washington Square Park in New York City, the pedestrian downtown in Montpellier, France, Mauer Park on Sundays in Berlin, Meridian Park on Sundays in Washington, D.C., the 16th Street Mall in Denver. But there are a lot of places where music is kind of a hard thing to deal with, and so it becomes banned or really heavily permitted. And so my love letter to the Parks Department Director is ultimately why this research matters, because it's a really hard job to be in charge of the New York City Parks Department, or any Parks Department, or to be Mrs. Mayor of a town, or to be on the city council or whatever. You don't want to deal with music because you got the Turkey Trot 5K to deal with. You got food licenses. You got all this kind of stuff. So this research matters because I go and collect these stories from my own life, but from the musicians of many different backgrounds, and from these public spaces where this magic happens. And I can bring it to that Parks Department person. I can say, it's a hard thing to just think about because you don't want to get into this nuanced conversation, but let me do that for you. And maybe we can relax some of the rules. Because when you bring music to a public space, something really cool happens. You've all probably experienced it. But maybe you don't think twice about the busker you walk by. And I would appreciate if you did. And I'm not going to talk anymore because in ethnomusicology, we talk a lot about music, and I hate that because I'd much rather listen to music. So I'll leave you with a song. And maybe next time, if you see me out on Thayer Street or a farmer's market, you'll stop and listen. Hot summer shirtless chasing girls drinking orange pop. No chance to win, but he don't stop. To be strong, to be stubborn, to be on the run from the cops. Michelle never wins, but I don't think he stops. Touch your lips like Belmondo did for Godard. Until your last breath, don't ever stop. Oh to lose, oh the loveliness of futile cause. To stay till the end and never have stopped. Reaching out, reaching out, reaching out, seeking, oh my God, the burn of hot wax. It don't ever stop. The season's long, work is hard, and it's easy to give up on your crops. But it's gonna come. Man, the rain never stops. Oh to lose, oh la track hanging in Montmartre. No chance with them girls, but he don't stop. Oh to win, it's a myth, only blondes come out on top. But we won't lose, sister, if you don't stop. Broken nose, broken bones, broken brain, and a broken jaw. 15 rounds. Some fighters don't stop. 15 rounds. Some fighters don't stop.